welcome to the latest edition of cybersecurity discussions between Ideal Integrations, Blue Bastion, and Henderson Brothers. I'm Michael Stratos from Ideal Integrations, and I have with me Corey Bussard and Luke McOmie from Blue Bastion, Dan Coast and Peter Horne from Henderson Brothers. These roundtables are designed to address critical areas of your security protocols, risk management, and financing strategies in short segments. Today's topic, 2022 budget planning for cybersecurity. It's that time of the year for most organizations, a time where managers set their expectations for the year ahead and prepare a budget. Dan, let's start with you. Your comments previously were that the market for cyber liability insurance is rapidly changing. Can you share with us an update on that market?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. So yeah, the market certainly has changed a lot. If I look back to where we were a year ago to today, the fourth quarter of 2020, things really started to pivot and change a lot in the cyber market. And that trend has certainly continued through 2021 here. And while it's changed, I think that change needs to be put in context around the type of business we're talking about, the size, the industry, and also what are their security controls and where are they in what I would call cyber maturity. If you're a small business that really isn't holding a lot of data, maybe an industrial services company that has people out doing work, right? If you're in that space and you also have good security controls, your cyber program probably it's not going to be a terrible renewal. You're going to see some level of increase just because that's what the market is trending. Maybe that's 10%, 15, 20, but it's not going to be the 80, 90, 100, 200% renewal increases that we're seeing around other areas of the business. So, your larger healthcare systems, your larger software development firms, folks that are really housing a lot of data. And if there were to be a breach, we're going to have more of that kind of spiderweb approach, systemic issues, loss of business interruption, and all the trickle down effect of a breach for one of those organizations. Their renewals are certainly not pretty. We have restrictions in coverage, retentions going way high, and obviously premiums going up. What's important, I think, is getting out ahead of that, having those discussions not a month or two before renewal, but 8 months before renewal. Where are you guys in your maturity? Where are we with MFA? Where are we with a lot of the things we previously talked about? Getting out ahead of that now as we're planning out for that next renewal cycle, and making sure that if we have to deploy capital around certain budgetary items, let's make sure that we're way out ahead of that. Because if we can get out ahead of the Blue Bastion side or the Ideal side, maybe that will soften the insurance renewal. Because if in lieu of that, if we don't do anything and we don't have MFA and we don't do these right things and we don't have a DR plan, it's not going to be easy, right? And our theme through these series have been, MFA is table stakes. You have to have it. And really, the market has said, if you don't have it, good luck finding coverage. There may be one or two markets out there, but by and large, without that, it's going to be really tough to find limit.
So what I had as a follow-up question, which you kind of touched on a lot of this stuff already, how are you handling budget conversations with your clients currently, including those that buy or don't buy cyber insurance? Obviously, you touched on a lot of the factors that are leading up to that, but any other comments on that, on those comments, how you're handling?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. One, communication is key. So making sure that we are outwardly communicating what's going on in the marketplace, having those conversations well in advance of any renewal cycle. We don't want to be sitting here 30 days before your renewal saying, your cyber premium is going to be increasing by 48%. That's not going to bode well for us, and certainly not going to be a great discussion to have with the insured. So I think it's get out ahead of it, have that conversation with broker, understand the carrier's position. What are they going to need for the renewal? What are those things that are non-negotiables from the carrier's aspect? What are they going to want to see? Those would be some advice I'd provide.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think about when I have conversations with clients, and I think anybody that listens to this, is that when looking at cyber liability insurance, sure, there's formulas and things of that nature, but having a partner that's well versed and having a true conversation, not just, hey, we need that insurance, give us a quote, but having the conversations of what's the expectations now, what's going to be the expectations in the future, and driving those clients toward a more secure model versus just a compliance model where I check the box that I can get the insurance, put them in a better position to be secure so that they're not having to exercise that option to use it, right? All right, so Luke, Corey, what are the trends for IT security and infrastructure costs that you're seeing?
We're seeing a lot of incidents. I think that right now people are rightfully worried about ransomware attacks. We've seen a lot of clients that are finally connecting and understanding that, you know, just because they're a small firm or a small office in a small city somewhere doesn't mean that they're not a target to these, you know, some of these international and larger threat actors that are out there. You know, and a lot of these attacks, they're just spraying and praying and finding who they can hack and then going after them. I think one of the other big things that we're seeing around shifts in budget are that people are really starting to understand that they're having to allocate money specifically for things in offensive security and defense versus just throwing their entire security budget into a compliance ask or a compliance focused like need. Really, that makes a difference because when people start approaching this stuff for more of a best practices approach versus checking the box, it makes a huge difference in really moving forward that security maturity that Dan was talking about initially. Corey?
Yeah, just to go off of one thing that Luke said, I really want to encourage folks to start watching the news or looking at different news sources, because one of the things that I just saw, you know, that's really big news is there's a 3-letter agency that overtook a very large ransomware group's services. That happened back in June, and they infiltrated and infected their backups. So whenever this ransomware group came back from their backups, they were infected still by this 3-letter agency. And that group disbanded by saying, now the United States is a major target and we're going to go all out on them. So if you had this thought prior to today that you may not be a target, I really encourage you to rethink that just on that standing alone, because now we are going to be heavily targeted in ways that we were not before. Also, some of the other things that we've been seeing just in general, though, to take a step back from that, is compliance has been hitting people pretty hard. And maybe you yourself are not compliant in a compliant field, but think about this. You're probably going to be part of a third or a fourth party vendor risk. So you may not have to be yourself part of a compliance based upon the information in your environment. However, your clients may be part of compliances, and as part of their compliances, you're now a third or fourth party vendor to them, which means that you now have to comply with them. So we're seeing a lot of things change in that direction. So anticipating that as part of your budget strategy. And then also, like, as Dan said, I can't say that loud enough. The MFA stuff, that's just one major aspect that we're really seeing that, you know, especially from cyber liability insurance, from compliances, things like that. These are some of the major conversations that just keep coming up and over and over again for us are those types of things where it's, do you have MFA? What are you doing for segmentation? What are you doing for this thing? You know, and do you have an incident response plan? These are from both a insurance and a compliance standpoint, some of the questions that a lot of our clients keep getting asked over and over again as part of third and fourth party audits from their clients. So I definitely wanted to touch upon those things.
So one of the things Luke said kind of put something in my head. I think it's less of an issue, but we did struggle at times where people felt that, well, why would they want to target me? Why would they want to come after me? But as Luke said, he said two things: spray and pray and target attack. So the thing that came to my head is understand that just because you're not a target or part of a targeted attack doesn't mean you won't become targeted because you were a part of a, as he said, spray and pray. Because the minute they catch something that they see a weakness or they can get in, then you will become targeted because they have an in. So keep that in mind. Luke, Corey, if there is room in the budget, what would be some of the areas that you would encourage people or products where organizations should start spending more, spending less in 2022?
Yeah, I think shifts in priorities around your security spend are huge. I think people need to stop for a minute, take a big breath, and assess what the world is in moving into 2022. They need to understand that the way that they were operating as a business 5 years ago or 10 years ago is long dead. So this concept of being able to buy some set it and forget it, let it run, signature driven antivirus solution that's supposed to be a cure-all, it doesn't deal with any of today's modern threats, right? We're watching customers who are having to just take on the challenge of figuring out, how do I do vulnerability assessments of company laptops that are now at home with my employees, right? That's not your network. How do you assess that machine to make sure that it's properly secure? And through some of the partnerships that we've been able to figure out new ways to approach that. But we're watching people really do a shift around making sure that the money that they're spending, the solutions that they're putting in place, and the controls that they're relying upon actually have traction or delivering value within their organization. So again, taking a step back and really assessing what you have in the house and trying to understand where potential gaps or blind spots exist really can help you make sure that your spend is being allocated correctly and effectively. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to add. Luke hit the nail on the head, in my opinion. Understanding where you're at in your cybersecurity maturity model, right? Where do you land? What are the things that you're doing today? And then also, my favorite question that clients always either bring up as a statement or a question is I don't know what I don't know. Well, how can you find out what you don't know? Well, it's by stopping, like Luke said, and take a deep breath, and then review everything that you're doing as part of your cybersecurity model. What is your plan? What do you have in place? What are the next things that you're going to do? Because cybersecurity is an ever evolving thing. It is not a stagnant, like Luke said, set it and forget it thing. That's gone. That doesn't exist anymore. It's an ever evolving. There's always a new thing. There's always a new way. It needs to be
integrated as well. You and I talk about that a lot with customers right now, which is that we have a lot of customers where security, especially offensive security type services, have always been an afterthought, right? We've released a product, we've made a change in our environment. Now let's do a pen test.
Yep.
That's the old way of thinking. You need to make sure that you're integrating security as part of your approach so that it's an active function within the business itself, so that as you're developing code, as you're making changes inside the environment, this is something that really calls out the importance of continuous penetration testing and vulnerability assessments. That's definitely something I would recommend that people talk to their provider or their partners about to make sure that they're on that path versus looking at static point in time, maybe once a year type assessment.
Exactly.
All right. Dan, Pete, any final comments? Luke, Corey, on this?
I have one, and it ties together items that Corey was saying about compliance with second, third, fourth level vendors. Also what Luke just talked about if you're about to buy a new product and then you do sort of a security assessment after the fact. I know that this session was primarily about your organization's budget and your organization's cybersecurity, but as you're going through that, let's say that your organization is, going to enter into a new contract to bring in a new vendor, or you're going to buy certain products. You're the first level of this like supply chain, and your compliance and what you're pushing on to your contractors and your vendors is important. Because let's say I'm going to put $100,000 in my budget to go buy Service X next year, and I find out that Service X lacks some security. I might now have to spend $115,000 to make sure that that vendor is beefed up enough in its cybersecurity so that my system is safe. So it's kind of a cause and effect, or you might have to spend more time, more energy on your side to push it onto your vendors. But your budget is also affected with the other person's budget. So it's just something else to think about as you're going through the exercise.
Yeah, so most modern companies nowadays are cool about, providing like a third-party attestation letter or statement about the security testing that they've done. Like if you're thinking about buying a product, call them up and ask for that. Be like, can you provide a letter or a statement showing that you guys have conducted testing and, at least check those basic boxes, right?
Yeah, I
Right.
think you just brought up a topic for another session.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing, Dan. I normally don't do like that end of the episode, keep you on your edge. Here's what's coming next, but
Stay
that
tuned for
actually should
next
be-
time.
Yeah, third party kind of security scorecard type stuff. So yeah, we should definitely touch on that in another episode. So, all right. So everybody, appreciate you joining. On behalf of Corey, Luke, Dan, and Pete, I'm Michael Stratos. Stay safe.